I made it. Oh my gosh. Sometimes it's crazy like going out without like trying to make sure everything's ready. Like there's milk, there's food, there's things. So.
How often do you leave without baby?
Not as often as I should.
Yeah.
But it's just easier to bring her around with me, especially since she's so portable.
Yeah.
But now that she's getting older, she can stay behind. She doesn't really need to be on my hip all the time.
Does she get fussy when you're not there? Like if your sister's babysitting?
No, she doesn't get fussy. She only really gets fussy when she's like tired or hungry. Okay. So I made sure to feed her. She took a nap before I left. Okay. She has milk. Okay. She has food. So she ideally should be good to go.
And you pump?
I pumped, yeah.
Okay. Does she take to the bottle well?
Mm-hmm,
I know. Yeah. Okay. Some babies don't like the bottle.
We introduced the bottle early on, like right away.
Okay.
Excuse me. Mainly because she was tongue-tied or she had trouble sucking milk out of my breast.
Okay. Like latching?
Yeah, latching, exactly. And I'm like, well, she's going to have milk somehow, so I would pump and give her in the bottle right away. Okay. So she took to the bottle first before she took to the breast. And then eventually she figured out how to suck out of the breast. So then she just started doing that, but then she never forgot how to take the bottle. Okay. So she can go back and forth. So she's
got it down. Yeah, that's good.
It's good because with Josiah, it was not the case at all.
Oh, you can like hook that onto your thing. So does she use a nookie?
No.
Oh, okay.
She does not like those things. I don't know why. I would have loved if she would have liked it because then that would change up or make things a lot easier for me.
Yeah.
But it's okay.
Some people like it, some people don't, because then it's hard to wean, right?
Yeah. I heard that too. I've never experienced it. Josiah never took to it either.
Okay, interesting.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm just probably not going to introduce it to any of my kids because, well, I never really needed to do it in the first place. So.
Yeah, my nanny baby 2 babies ago didn't take to the nookie, but my last nanny baby did. And you could just pop that thing in.
Yeah, I know.
That
was one thing. I'm like, damn, I wish I could just mute.
Yeah, literally. It was just
mute
like a little button.
Yeah. But they never took to it, so it's whatever. Had to be more creative.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'm glad we made it here.
Yes. I know it was like back and forth. I'm like, oh, can I make it? And then eventually my sister's like, okay, I'm free. And I'm like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah. I'm sure it's nice having her home too. And she
actually moved out.
Oh, she did? Oh, I didn't know that.
It was just recent, like a couple days ago. She moved out because we figured that, we kind of had a good flow going and she's been more busy at work. And she's like, well, I'm not really helping out as much as I thought I would be, so let me just open up this room. So now we have an extra room for...
So that'll be the nursery?
Yeah, exactly. Playrooms, have a area for her. Mm-hmm. So, but she works 5 minutes away from us, so she can still come over during her lunch break, or if she can work from home, she'll work from my house and stay with the kids. So it helps, yeah. It's good to have a village. I'm telling you, if you don't have a village, it's going to be a struggle. Because even I'm struggling with the village.
Yeah.
But it's okay. It's all fun and games.
And I'm sure it was more necessary in those first pivotal months. Mm-hmm. And now it's things are chill. You guys are adapting to a new flow.
Exactly. She's got a pretty good routine going.
Okay.
She pretty much wakes up around the same time, takes her first nap around the same time. She usually takes... the length of her naps are pretty consistent recently, which is nice because it's been a struggle getting her to get on a consistent routine. Mm. But she seems to be getting on a good routine now. So it's just overnights is the problem. And she gets these eczema flare-ups that wake her up during the night because she's scratching. So we're struggling with that. But
yeah. What do you think that's from? Is it an allergy reaction?
It could be an allergy reaction. It could be what I'm eating, but I don't really know what it could be because I don't eat dairy. I don't eat meat. So it could be gluten.
Yeah. Okay. Do you know Barbara O'Neill? Okay. She's this amazing herbal doctor. She has a lot of lectures on YouTube that I've been consuming a lot of. And she said that eczema is often a symptom of allergies. Mm-hmm. And then she was talking a lot about, I watched this whole lecture on gluten and wheat and stuff, and a lot of it is from that. Gluten. So I'm
that's probably it. And, do I want to cut out gluten? I don't know. But it's like she's almost 1, so it's not like she's gonna be relying less and less on my breast milk as she gets older.
Have you been introducing solids?
A few. It's been interesting because she's just not. She plays with it, which is normal.
Yeah.
But she's not actually like consuming it.
Okay.
But we'll see. She's been having some sweet potatoes, some squash, some steamed broccoli, steamed green beans. She had a few mango, some kiwi. So she's been introduced to a variety of things, but she's just like spits it out.
This feels
throws
weird.
It. Yeah, like it just hasn't really been much of a process. But I read online, especially with baby-led weaning, that it's normal for up until like 10 months for them to just like play with it, and then closer to like 10, 11 months is when they're actually like actively eating, especially when they see you putting food in your mouth, chewing, swallowing, like, oh, you're putting that in your mouth and you're not spitting it out. Yeah, exactly. There was actually one time I was eating something and she would directly put her hand right in my mouth as I was chewing. So yeah, I think she's starting to become more interested in eating food. So I think that should help with her actually eating and not just playing with the food. So
yeah. Do you guys do spicy food?
Not right now. No. So we actually had a whole ordeal that happened when she was, I want to say about 7 months old. I let her take a little lick of a curry. So I made curry, and it was such a dumb idea, but I didn't think much of it. So I had her lick the spoon of the curry I was making, just a little bit. And she was like, ooh, this is so good. She's like,
Yeah.
But then later on, like 2 hours later, she started violently throwing up and coughing.
Really?
And we were like, oh my God, what is going on? And turned out, I think she was just like, her stomach was just way too sensitive to all the different spices that I put together. Like, because curry is like curry powder, cumin,
so
coriander.
Many different things.
There's so many things you throw in there. And I realized, okay, the less ingredients, the better with her, especially as her stomach is still. Do I think if she had a lick of curry now, would that happen? Probably not, because that was like 3-4 months ago, and her stomach has drastically improved since then.
Yeah.
But I'm probably not going to give it to her until she's like, oh, like well over a year.
I would have some PTSD from that.
It was pretty traumatic, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Because we were like, Bronson and I were like, oh my God, do we take her in? But then I sat with her and I'm just like, you know what? Let's just let her get it all out. So she was coughing. She threw up multiple times. And then eventually, I think she got so tired, she just fell asleep.
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, I think she's good. And we kept checking on her, and she was sleeping just fine. And the next morning, she was like, what's up, you guys?
She just had to cleanse
She just had to
body,
cleanse.
Yeah.
And it was crazy. It's like she didn't even have that much. I don't think she had that much of a lick. It was like a little dab on her tongue. But that goes to show you how sensitive some babies could be.
Yeah.
So.
And curry does like cleanse your system. Like for a lot of people, you'll get cleared right out. So
yeah, it definitely cleared her out. I'm gonna tell you that. That was intense.
So I know that you didn't go to the doctor while you were pregnant at all. So are you keeping that consistent with her and like not taking her to the doctor, or like what is your protocol with like that type of thing?
Yeah, so I'm not opposed to taking her to the doctor. I just don't take her in like these like consistent like 3-month checkup, 6-month checkup, child visit. One, I don't think they're necessary. And two, most of the time when they do, they pressure you to like do all these vaccines and do all these different interventions that I personally it doesn't align with my values.
Yeah.
Because I believe that like our bodies are good the way they are, and there's natural remedies on the earth that can heal and prevent different things, different ailments that you could experience. However, she did have a really bad rash on the inside of her elbow, which is just now finally healed. It's scarred, but like at least it's like the scar is healing. But she's had that really bad rash and it's got infected. It was like a bacterial infection. So for things like that, like I would take her in. Like I'm just like, okay, let me just see what the doctor says. However, I was very intentional about who I went to go see. So there's this place called New Kingdom Clinic in Eden Prairie. They're a holistic, naturopathic clinic that prioritizes the whole being and not just like the allopathic method of addressing illnesses.
What is allopathic?
It's like another term for like Western medicine, like
Okay.
science-based, evidence-based, which is in a term like, okay, you diagnose a series of symptoms and then you offer a remedy for it, like usually a pharmaceutical or some type of surgery. Whereas, you know, the way I prefer to approach it is, okay, let's see your whole body. What are you eating? How's your sleep? Are you stressed? Stuff like that. And then they can provide like natural remedies like, oh, maybe you should uptake your vitamin D or cut out this gluten possibly, see how you feel the next month or so.
So it's more like preventative care versus
Exactly.
like treating symptoms.
Exactly. Because most like illnesses are usually a outward manifestation of imbalance within your body, and then you just have to figure out what is out of whack, what is out of balance, and you can address that. So with her, I realized that she is she runs hot. She runs hotter than most babies. So she sweats a lot, and I noticed that like at least during the summertime when it was still really warm, she would sweat in between her elbows and the back of her neck, and that sweat started creating issues within her glands. It was called, gosh, I don't remember what the condition was called, but it happens a lot like for kids who get diaper rashes when it's like really wet and like moist, and it's like a haven for bacteria and fungus.
Hot
so, like,
and moist.
Hot and moist, exactly. And that is ultimately what happened.
Okay.
So we were like, okay, so then, you know, that's what I already kind of knew this going in. It's funny because like I had an idea of what the issue was, but just to like make myself feel better, I took her in, and I wouldn't say that the doctor was unhelpful, but he kind of just like reiterated the things that I already kind of known. And he did recommend he recommended a really good skin soother to help. So I actually liked that. But other than that, he just said, yeah, try to keep it dry, you know, make sure that, you know, you put loose clothing on, no tight clothing. And I'm like, okay. So I ended up putting cornstarch on the inside of her elbow every chance I could.
Is that like baby powder, but like...
It could be used as baby powder. It's a way to like dry up excess moisture. And that dried it up really quickly. And then, well, first I actually had to treat the infection because it became infected because it just wasn't healing. So it was a bacterial infection. At first it was fungal. I thought it was fungal, but after I put the antifungal cream, it didn't do anything. So then it was bacteria. So then I put a bacteria ointment every night, and then I noticed that it wasn't like gushy or goozy or oozy. So then I cleaned that up, and then I put cornstarch, and that dried up all the excess moisture. And then eventually, when that was done, I was able to add more moisture back to it to let it actually heal. Okay. And that was a whole like multi-month process. Like she's almost 9 months now. She's been having this issue since she was about, what was October? October, she was 5 months? Yeah, about 5 months. So yeah, like 4 months of this.
Yeah.
So, but that's the thing, like with holistic approaches, it usually does take more time. But if you see that it's improving and not getting worse, then at least you know that you're on the right track. So I was just had to be really patient because again, with babies, they rub things off, they keep scratching. Like she was halting her own healing because of just her being herself and constantly picking at her body and removing the bandages. Yeah. So to answer your question, I do take her to the doctor when I feel it's necessary, but I don't rely on like the schedule that, you know, the APA.
It's not like a routine
No, it's not a routine, no.
So when you were saying that she runs hot, have you looked into like the Ayurvedic stuff? Because it makes me think of like her Pitta dosha.
I haven't. No,
okay.
I don't
feel
really,
like you'd be into that.
I would definitely be into that.
Yeah.
No, I haven't looked into that. And actually, I really just looked at her astrology chart. Okay. Which doesn't really. Well, yeah, actually, it does. So, with at least in the medical lens, because you can look at an astrology chart through like a medical, not like a diagnostic way like the doctors do, but in like a way of like, oh, these are the certain type of illnesses or ailments that probably you can encounter.
Yeah.
And I noticed that she is prone to just being hot in general. Like she runs hot, and definitely she'll have skin issues. So I noticed that her Venus placement was in a hard aspect with a planet that can cause skin issues, with Pluto, Saturn, any like malefic planet can, with a hard aspect to the Venus, can cause like issues with your skin, because Venus rules the skin, or corresponds with the skin. So I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So that's what I saw in regards to that. But the Ayurvedic stuff, I'm definitely going to look into, because I'm sure there's way more information I can get out of that.
Yeah, I feel like it talks a lot about like treating the holistic body, and it talks about the different doshas and what your body is prone to. So yeah. Is there any like crossover between like Ayurveda and astrology?
Probably.
I'd be curious, because I know with like, have you looked into like Vedic astrology versus?
A little bit.
Okay.
I have a little bit. I'm not as well versed in Vedic astrology, but I do know a few astrologers in our astrology group, the NCGR group, that practices Vedic astrology. And actually, this one member is writing a book on it. As we speak, I actually try to get him to speak for us, and he's like, I would, but I have a book deadline, so let me know next year. But there are definitely astrologers out there who are very well versed in Ayurvedic and Western astrology, and then there are astrologers who are really well versed in Vedic astrology, which is technically Eastern or Indian or Jyotish astrology.
Is it just that the time periods are different because of the different areas of the world, or is there a different like perceptual lens that's different as well?
From what I gather, and I could be wrong, but Vedic astrology and Western astrology differ based off of the starting point of Aries, or where the zodiac starts. Okay. I believe like Vedic astrology, Aries starts at a different degree, and Western astrology, Aries is like 0 degrees Aries. So it's really just where the actual zodiac starts, and then but the whole planet movements, the associations with the planets, what the planets mean, are pretty similar in the both. It's just the timing that is off.
I gotcha. Yeah, because I'm an Aries in Western and then Pisces in Vedic.
Exactly, because so it's like the calendar is off. Yeah, exactly. Because I'm a Sagittarius in Vedic, but Capricorn in Western. Okay. So I personally practice Western astrology because that's what I've known. And also because Western astrology has been a huge focal point in like the... Well, let me go back. So the Romans, who really popularized Western astrology, it didn't start with them, but they made it bigger than what it was before. They took a lot of their insights of Western astrology from the Egyptians, the Babylonians. However, because the Romans had a huge empire, their influence was greater than what the Eastern practitioners could have ever surmised. So I honestly think that's why Western astrology is a lot more popular than Vedic or Eastern astrology, just because of the influence that the Roman Empire had on the world. So
yeah, that makes sense. So would you consider astrology to be like central in your spiritual practice, or like what role does it play in your life?
It definitely does play a huge role in my life. I'm president of our local astrology group first and foremost. So it's like I'm constantly in meetings trying to set up speakers, trying to figure out how can we grow our membership and stuff like that. And in terms of my spiritual practice, I often like to look at the transits ahead of time just to kind of see like, oh, what should I look out for? And I also like to dig deeper into astrology and how it relates to other spiritual practices like tarot and tarot is a whole nother thing. I've kind of got into the deep end with tarot now, because there's like this amazing connection with the zodiac and the planets and the tarot cards, especially in terms of the Kabbalistic tree of life. I can talk about that for a long time, because I'm just now I'm like, dang, this is crazy. And I feel like that's deepening my knowledge around astrology. So yeah, I personally believe that astrology is a great tool to understand yourself and to understand the world around you, and to just feel as though like you're not an accident in a sense. Like you do have a divine purpose that you can attribute or you can follow. It just depends on, how much of your free will you're willing to allocate towards that. I utilize astrology right now as an educational thing, mainly because I want to learn as much as I can. I'm a Gemini rising, so I'm all about learning.
I'm a Gemini rising too.
There you still you relate, because it's like there's like things where you're like, oh my gosh, I need to look more into that. What book is that? Let me read into it. Let me read this article. Listen to this podcast. Let me watch this YouTube video, because like making sense of the world is literally what drives us. It's like, oh my gosh, I want to learn more. So I'm kind of stuck in that right now. And eventually I want to move past that and actually start applying this knowledge. That's where I kind of struggle with, is the application. I have all of these facts. I know all this stuff in my head, but how can I put it to practical use? And with astrology right now, it's just helping people understand their natal charts and their personality and their destiny. But eventually, like, it can be used to help plan big events.
Yeah.
It can be used to, as divination, similar to tarot cards. If you have like a pressing issue or need guidance on a subject or an event or some type of experience, you don't know what's happening, erecting a horary chart, astrology chart, can give you some insight of what's going on behind the scenes that you're not picking up on. I've yet to still do that with clients, but I think there's so much things that can be done with astrology.
Yeah. I heard that the last time that there was a huge planetary event, like a specific type of one, was when there was like a gold rush. And then the second time that happened, it was like the Bitcoin rush, and like those were aligned or something like that. So
yeah, I don't remember what planet that is, but if it was a gold rush, I wonder if it was something to do with Jupiter and Bitcoin is Uranus too, because it's technology.
Oh.
Yeah, but I know for sure that with Pluto going into Aquarius, and Pluto's going to be in Aquarius for like 20 years. But the last time Pluto was in Aquarius, that's when the United States was formed. So, a lot of astrologers are, cautiously predicting that like, oh, this might be the end of the U.S. empire.
Interesting. Yeah.
Which I tend to kind of believe, because astrology aside, if you just look at the state of our country, then it's like, things aren't really getting better, right? Like people are, a lot more antsy. There's a lot more angst. People are just living paycheck to paycheck. The cost of living is so high. The quality of things that we're purchasing has decreased. So we're paying more for crappier products.
Yeah.
We can't really enjoy our lives because we're so busy working and we're stressed out. And then instead of like actually taking the time to get to know ourselves, we're stuck in this loop of rat race, and we can't actually focus our energy on like who is to blame here. So
that's Pluto?
Pluto is Pluto is an enigmatic planet, but my understanding of Pluto is that Pluto represents forced initiations, forced transformations, and death and stuff like that too. But Pluto is the planet that kind of forces you to take action or to do something that you normally wouldn't do in your comfort zone, because no other direction is applied or no other action is thought of. So for example, someone can have a Pluto transit and they got into a horrible car crash that completely changed their ability to walk, or they had a stroke or something along those lines. Pluto is a planet that forces you to have to change your circumstances. Like, you're not ready for it. It's almost in a sense where like you are thrusted into an experience that you believe is bigger than your ability to handle, but there's no other option other than just to face it head on. And that's what Pluto forces people to do. So for example, with the United States, back when Pluto was in Aquarius.
I don't know if it's doing anything weird. Okay.
for the United States, back when Pluto was in Aquarius in the 18th century, you know, according to the history books, I wasn't there, so I'm just going to say what they tell us is the truth. But according to the history books, you know, the settlers were fed up with the British Empire and like all the taxation without representation, not listening to them, this and that, not having freedom to do as they please. And in a sense, they were forced to have to rebel against them and create this whole new country that they're like, well, I don't really know how we're going to do this, but we're going to do it anyway. That's kind of where Pluto is. Or now with Pluto in Aquarius again, it's like, okay, is there going to be another uprising with the people fighting back against the powers that be? But is it going to be more localized, or is it going to be AI fighting, or who knows, right?
Yeah.
I can't predict. I try not to predict astrology stuff because I can't see into the future. There's only so much you can do because ultimately the planets have their own agenda.
Yeah.
And we're just, unfortunately, the people who have to succumb to the agenda. But yeah, no, Pluto is a powerful planet, and anyone who has gone through significant Pluto transits can say that more often than not, during that time, was a very pivotal time of their life. I remember during my Pluto transit, that's when I got pregnant with my first child, and I was only 19 years old. I was still in school, and it really forced me to grow up, just like, you know, I have no idea how I'm going to do this, how I'm going to graduate, but I'm just going to face it and just get it done. And it does. The great thing about Pluto, although it brings these really difficult experiences into our lives, it truly shows us the true power of the human grit. And that's another positive aspect of Pluto. It's resilience. It's powerful. It's the ability to, you know, do things that you never thought you would have been able to do in the midst of, like, and the only way you would have been able to do that is because you were forced into this experience, into this circumstance.
So do you only have, I thought you were saying, do you only have one Pluto transit, or does it happen like cyclically?
It happens cyclically. So a Pluto transit could be anything like Pluto conjunct your natal sun, Pluto squaring your sun. So right now Pluto is in Aquarius. So if you have any planets in Aquarius, Pluto is going to touch those planets in a conjunction. But it could take 20 years. So if you have Pluto in if you have like Mercury at like 5-degree Aquarius, Pluto will likely touch that Mercury within the next year or two. But if you have like Venus at 15 degrees Aquarius, Pluto is not going to touch that planet for another 5-6 years, estimating. But also Aquarius is a air sign. So if you have planets in other air signs like Gemini or Libra, then Pluto will make a trine aspect to those planets. But Aquarius is a fixed sign. So if you have planets in other fixed signs such as Taurus, Leo, or Scorpio, then Pluto is going to make a square aspect, which is a more difficult aspect to those planets.
So there's a lot of ways that it can impact like the entire chart and like your whole chart, in different ways.
Just in different ways. And Pluto's effects is more strongly felt in hard aspects. So soft aspects are trine, sextiles. So you may experience Pluto's effects to a degree, but not as strongly as if you were experiencing Pluto in a square or in an opposition or in a quincunx.
Quincunx?
Yeah, there's a lot of, I know.
Is that a shape?
No, it's like it's a 150-degree arc opening on the chart. So it's kind of like it operates similar to an opposition in a sense.
Okay.
And there's also hidden aspects too, like aspects that you can't actually see on the chart, but you can calculate behind the scenes. And Pluto can operate in that way as well.
I know, something that I saw that was all over TikTok is so this happened in December, something like that, but all of the cardinal signs were going through this huge transition to where we were ending negative karmic cycle that had been happening for the last like 14 years or something like that. I was like, wait, I was in high school.
Yeah.
So, and me and Stig are both cardinal signs. So it was like with Aries and Libra and all of that. And after it ended, I was like really trying to pay attention. Like, do I feel a difference? They're like, you are going to reap the benefits of all of the challenges that you've gone through. And like, it's just been like setback after setback. And then you're going to like birth into like integrating all of these challenges. And I definitely feel like I was aware of a lot of those integrations and like improvements and like a lot of doors opening. So I was definitely paying attention to that and be like, okay, do I feel a difference? Like,
no, that's the beauty too, because yeah, Pluto just left Capricorn, so Capricorn is a cardinal sign. So again, all the other cardinal signs had a little bit of they felt the effects of Pluto, because whatever sign Pluto is, if there's another sign that has any type of association with that particular sign, it's going to feel the effects, just like Aquarius and Taurus, Leo, and Scorpio will feel the effects of Pluto being in Aquarius. All of us cardinal signs, because I'm a Capricorn too. So and the thing is, Pluto was in Capricorn, and I have a ton of planets. I have a Capricorn stellium. Okay, so I have like, I want to say 5 planets in Capricorn.
Okay.
So Pluto was transiting planet after planet after planet throughout my whole high school, adolescence, college, early 20s, and I admit, like, I went through crazy like transformation, crazy transitions. Like, I feel as though like the moment I entered high school, it was like a whole new chapter started, and I didn't realize at the time, because I was one way throughout high school, then I got to college and I got pregnant. That was a whole nother life event, and then throughout my early 20s, it was really me just feeling as though like I'm not caught up, like I feel behind. But I was just constantly working, trying to figure out what I'm doing in my life. But then as soon as Pluto exited Capricorn, it's almost as if like I got the clarity that I needed. Like, all this, events, all this experience that I had, it led me to this very moment of me realizing what I actually want to do with my life. So it's profound, but I'm a little bit nervous because I know I have Venus in Aquarius, and I also I have my moon in Taurus. So I'm curious to see how Pluto is going to affect my Venus, because Venus also rules my 5th house of children. So I'm like, okay, how is Pluto going to affect my children, right? How is Pluto going to affect the moon? The moon represents my money, because the moon, Cancer, is on my 2nd house cusp. So because the moon rules Cancer, and Cancer is on my 2nd house, and 2nd house is money, I'm like, okay, am I going to win the lottery here?
Yeah.
So what's going on? So I'm really, that's where I'm looking forward to just see how, I'm more cautiously optimistic to see how Pluto would do it. And the thing about Pluto is that one thing that, and this is just a personal observation, I could be wrong, but one thing that I noticed about Pluto is it's going to force you in situations that is going to be for your growth, ultimately. It may be very, very uncomfortable. You may hate it. You may feel like it's the end of the world. But once you get to the other side of it, you're going to realize how much you've actually grown from that experience.
Yeah.
And that's the whole purpose of Pluto. It's forced initiations that will ultimately foster long-term growth. And like the phoenix rising out of the ashes type of thing. Pluto is very much associated with that imagery.
Okay. That makes sense. I still need to get my chart read.
I know.
Really want to do that.
There's a lot of charts that I actually have saved that I need to read, but it's so hard with like, the thing that I struggle with as like a mom and working full time, because I still work full time for a software company on the side.
Yeah.
Mind you, it's a really chill job. Like, I really just kind of support the sales team. However, it can be demanding here and there. So it's like, and it's difficult sometimes because it's like, I need this income because it's also allowing me to focus on my own passions. But it's difficult trying to juggle, okay, astrology, tarot, my art stuff, because even then, like I am also an artist as well. Like when do I get time to actually do the art stuff that I want to do?
And homeschooling.
And
Like you're
homeschooling.
homeschooling these kids.
Yeah.
That's so wild.
It's funny because my mom was talking to me, and her and I, we kind of butt heads sometimes, but I know it's all love ultimately. But she like is always on me, like, why are you constantly putting yourself in these difficult positions? Like, you know, you can make your life so much easier if you would just put your kids in school, or if you would just, you know, hire someone to do this or blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, you're right. But ultimately, my values are, especially with homeschooling, personally for me, I think that the public school education system is atrocious. John Gatto? Anyway, the book is called Dumbing Us Down. And I think his name is John Gatto or something, Grotto or something. But if you look up Dumbing Us Down.
John G.
Yeah, exactly. If you look up that book, he is an ex-public school teacher, and he basically talks about how the public school system does not foster creativity. It does not foster critical thinking. It doesn't foster growth in a sense of being an individual. It kind of conforms you to for all the kids to think the same way, to learn the same way, to act the same way.
Like factory producers.
Yeah. And it's ultimately by design, because the people who created the public education system was John D. Rockefeller. And John D. Rockefeller in the early 1900s, he was basically a business tycoon. And he's like, how can I make sure that I have enough workers to make me richer? Okay, let's fund, and let's fund this public, because before the early 1900s, all kids were homeschooled. It was actually normal for kids to get their primary education from their parents, and then they would work in trades. They'll find someone who's like a craftsman or some type of trade, and they would apprentice with them. That was typically how it would be done. But then John D. Rockefeller decided, oh no, these kids are illiterate. Let's, put them all in the school system and, learn from there. But ultimately, I believe that there was more nefarious intentions, because ultimately it has created the system that we know of now, of kids that are just deciding to go to college because, I want to go to college. And I'm not saying that college is bad. I think college is good for the people who actually utilize the best of it. Because for me, I went to college, but I really went because I guess this is just what you do. This is just what you do.
Yeah.
And, but had I known about the different options that I had, I probably would have chosen a different path, truly.
Yeah. A lot of people are not informed when they go to college. Like I definitely wasn't. I changed my major like 3 or 4 different times, wasted a lot of money, and that definitely felt like the only option. I do appreciate what I learned from it, and I feel like I gained some like work ethic and like some grit through that by completion, because I feel like I've always struggled with completion. So actually like closing that and be like, okay, I actually did it. It feels good.
Yeah.
But Stieg didn't go to college, and
there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, college has its plus. It's great for like networking, finding friends, just traveling abroad.
And there's some professions where you have to do it to like get a license and stuff.
So I think it's great for the people who truly are going to utilize all of the benefits.
Yeah.
But if you're going because you just feel that's the next step, or this is just what expected of me, I even like encourage my younger sister, like, if you really don't know what you want to study in school, take a gap year. Take a year or 2 off after high school. Like, you don't have to go to college right away. She ended up going to college, but now she's like, I don't know what I want to do. And I'm like, I kind of told you to do that. But I don't blame her. Because we did grow up in a very traditional Nigerian family. Like, education was like hammered on us. Like, if we didn't go to college, we were bums. Like, that was the end of it. So I understand why she did it, but luckily she didn't make the same mistakes I did and take out a whole bunch of loans. All of my siblings thankfully listened to me, and when I advised them, like, really be careful about the loans you're taking out, because like, I'm still paying on my loans and it's atrocious.
So are you the oldest?
I am, yeah.
Of how many?
Of four. I'm the oldest of four, so I have three younger siblings.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when did your parents come here? I feel like you've told me this story before, but
yeah, no problem. So I was born in '95 in Nigeria, Lagos to be exact. And then
I didn't know you were. I don't think I knew you were born there.
I was born there. Yeah.
Oh, you were.
I was born in Lagos. I lived there for almost 2 years because then my parents, my mom actually won the visa lottery back. So Bill Clinton back in the 90s was just giving out visas left and right. He's like, you get a visa,
like
you get
Oprah.
a visa. Right. And I'm like, okay. So then my mom won the visa lottery to come to the States. And she, my dad and myself, we moved here. She said 98. Yeah.
So if one person gets the lottery, which was your mom, does that mean her whole like immediate family can go as well?
She was able to bring her family. Yeah.
Wow.
I assume that's what happened because we all came. But yeah. And I think actually that's what prompted my parents to get married. I think they had to be legally married.
Yeah.
So they got married. Because I remember I was looking at their wedding photos and I'm like, why am I there? Like, y'all are on me about having babies outside of the marriage and y'all like did the same thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So they got married. We moved here to the United States, to Minnesota. I mean, we had they knew people who lived here, which is why we came here.
That's why they came here. Okay.
Because I always told my parents, like, y'all couldn't pick a different state.
Why Minnesota?
Like,
is always my question.
I'm like, why here? It's cold. But it turns out it's because they had support here, which makes sense. So we stayed with some family friends for like at least a year, I want to say, maybe a couple months to a year, a few months to a year. And then eventually my dad was able to get us a small apartment and they just kind of built their way up. They definitely started from scratch and then built their way up. And then my siblings were born and yeah, here we are.
Was there like a large Nigerian community in Minnesota?
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there is a very large Nigerian community here.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty huge. Well, it's because people are like constantly sponsoring each other. It's like one person will come here and they'll sponsor their brother or they'll sponsor their friend and they'll come here and then that person will sponsor another person and they'll come here and that person will sponsor two more people and then they'll have babies and then they'll meet someone and they'll have babies and then it really started. Honestly, I know some Nigerians that have been here since like the 80s, the 70s, and that's just been the thing. Like Nigerians are very community focused to an extent. I mean, there are other ways I feel they could do better, be more community focused. But when it comes to, helping people get a leg up in opportunities, especially in like the Western world, very much so. They're like, all right, let's get here. So yeah, there's a huge community here, especially in like where is it? Brooklyn Park.
Oh.
Brooklyn Park,
Okay.
Brooklyn Center. I think for sure those two cities. Part of Minneapolis, but not really. St. Paul, for sure. Yeah.
Do you travel back to Nigeria?
I want to. The last time I traveled back was 2010, and I was like 15 years old. I didn't appreciate it as much as I wish I would have, because obviously I was an angsty teenager.
Yeah.
But Bronson and I actually plan on having a trip back out there next year, 2026, to visit. However, there is some planning that needs to be done because unfortunately Nigeria is not as stable, and we likely will have to like hire security because because Bronson's dad, my father-in-law, he goes to Nigeria every year, but he hires security the moment he hops off the plane.
Really?
Yeah, because the thing is that there's a lot of robberies, there's a lot of kidnappings. Especially if they look at you, they can tell if you're not from here. Because even though I'm Nigerian, I don't speak the way they do. I have an American accent. They can even tell by the way I look, like, oh, you don't look stressed out. You don't look like, they can just tell by my face that I am not. I didn't grow up there.
Do you speak any of the language?
I know Yoruba. I don't speak it fluently, but I know enough to like understand it in the movie. Unfortunately, my parents didn't didn't make us speak to them.
Yeah.
And in fact, actually, my mom said that honestly, we just wanted you guys to learn English. Like we were still learning English, so we didn't want you guys to get confused and like mix
More like
the two.
assimilate.
Yeah, more assimilate. But now my mom's like, oh, I regret it so much. I'm like, girl, it's fine. Like I can still learn it. Like I know a few words. I teach my kids some words too.
Does Bronson know it?
Well, he's not Yoruba. So his dad is from Edo State, which is Ishan. So there's like thousands of tribes in Nigeria. And the thing that happened with colonialism is that the Brits pretty much gathered all these individual tribes and just kind of put them all into one landmass and said, you guys are all in Nigeria, which was honestly one of the worst things that could have happened because there was no sense of cohesion. There was no community there. 'Cause it's like, first of all, the languages weren't even the same, so they couldn't even communicate with each other. That it caused a lot of wars. I mean,
different cultures, different practices.
Exactly, and it was hard for people to get on the same page. And I think the British knew what they were doing when they did that, because if we put all these people together and keep them fighting amongst each other, they won't notice that we're like taking all of their resources.
Right.
So the Yoruba people actually was a huge empire in West Africa prior to the British arriving to that part of Africa. The Yoruba empire spanned from like parts of Ghana to the Benin and part of Nigeria, and then there was northern Nigeria that's mainly Islamic. They're Muslim, and they got their practices from Mali, which was an Islamic country. Yoruba was not Christian or Islamic. They actually have their own specific spirituality, which I've actually have started to dive deeper into to learn more about, like the Orishas and like the creation story and, the different practices and values that are associated with the Yoruba religion, which is actually incredible. And I actually talked to my dad and I'm like, is there anyone in our family who were, practitioners of this spirituality? And he was like, oh yeah, plenty. And I'm like, well, can I talk to them? And unfortunately most of them are gone now. And I'm like, dang, that's like a part of our history that has just been erased. Because now majority of Nigerians are either Christian or Islam. And there is a very small subsection of Nigerians who still practice the native spirituality, but unfortunately, they're few and far between. But the Yoruba Empire has influenced the diaspora so much because the Ifa religion has spread across to like Cuba with like Santeria and Brazil, Dominican Republic. So Santeria is the mixture of Yoruba and Catholicism, I believe. Because of course they also were brought up Catholic in that part of the world, the West Indies. So it was really interesting because they would combine the Yoruba Orishas with the Catholic saints, and then they just made their own new religion. So it was really interesting to see how that played out. But yeah.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I know that I am part Nigerian.
Really?
According to my ancestry.
That's so cool.
That's like the largest part of my blackness.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, a lot of, slave ships came out of that area. I wouldn't be surprised that majority of Black Americans have some type of Nigerian ancestry within them. Or Ghana, or even Benin too. The Benin Empire is a huge empire as well. And that's where Brownson's dad is from, is the Benin Empire.
Okay. Yeah, it was cool to see both your guys' family at the baby shower.
I know, my mom, oh my gosh, my mom couldn't make it, and my dad, unfortunately, he had a health issues. That's why he couldn't make it. But yeah, seeing Brownson's dad there with his whole
and
getup.
he was all dressed up. I was like, oh wow.
Had my dad been able to come, he would have been dressed up too.
Really?
Yeah. It's in Nigerian culture, any party you have to dress to impress. Like you want to be the best dressed person. Like in a Nigerian wedding, there's no such thing as outshining the bride. Like in American weddings, they're like, oh, don't wear white because you don't want to outshine the bride.
Yeah.
No, you want to try to outshine the bride as much as you can. But obviously, like you never could, because everyone knows that the bride she'll
be dressed to a T.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in a sense, you can't. But it's actually offensive in our culture for you to not put an effort into your outfit.
Yeah.
Like if you come and you can tell, and people can tell that you didn't put in an effort, they'll look at you like, what are you doing?
It's
like, get out of here.
disrespectful.
Yeah, you're really like disrespecting my gathering right now. Like, go clean yourself up and come back and look presentable.
Interesting.
So parties, I mean, especially Yorubas, like Nigerians are huge partiers. We love to party. We love to have a good time. There's a party for every type of occasion. There was a party for when I was born. It's called a naming ceremony, and that is more specific to the Yoruba culture. Whereas after a week when a baby is born, that's when you actually tell everyone what the name of the baby is. So for the first week of that child's life, no one knows what the name of the baby is. It's like the baby. I don't even think people actually see the baby for that first week. I think once the naming ceremony happens, that's usually the first time that outside extended family members will actually see the baby for the first time, and then that's when people bring their blessings, bring their gifts, and and then the parents will announce, okay, what's the name of this baby? And typically the naming part of a child is very sacred because you're almost in a sense either trying to figure out their destiny or what the circumstances are. There are different ways that a name could come out. It could be like if a child is born during really, really hard times, you can create a name that represents those hard times. Or if a child was born and you want this child to help bring in prosperity in your family, you can name that child in regards to that. So for my example, my full name is Sunmisola, and my middle name is Olamide. So Sunmisola means push me towards wealth. So Sumi, like push me, Sola, Ola means wealth. So at the time when I was born, my parents were dirt poor. They were living in Nigeria. My mom said that she would use the last of her money just to get food for myself because she couldn't afford anything else. So because of that, I was born, and my dad said that they actually had a different name picked out for me for the longest time. I don't remember what it was, but my dad actually just told me this not too long ago. And he said, like, we had a name picked out for you, but then at the time of the naming ceremony, I heard like this angel in my ear. He's kind of dramatic, but he's a great storyteller. But he was like, I heard this angel in my ear that whispered Sunmisola in my ear. And when my dad asked me, because usually the people who facilitates the naming ceremony is the parents of the new parents, so the grandparents, typically on the father's side, I believe. And so my grandfather asked my dad, like, okay, what's the name of your baby? And my dad said my name, and my mom looked at him like, that's not what we agreed on.
Wow.
Yeah, and then my dad looked back at her, and he was like, it's okay. Like,
wow.
This is divinely, orchestrated.
Yeah.
So when my dad named me that, it was in the circumstance of we were just in poverty in a sense. And not too long after, my mom won the Visa lottery, and here we are. Isn't that crazy?
Oh my gosh. That's amazing story.
Yeah. So then my middle name, Olamide, means my wealth has arrived. So Sunmisola, push me to wealth, and then it's like a sequence. Sunmisola, Olamide, my wealth has arrived. Or no, push me to wealth and my wealth has arrived. So it's kind of like a complete sentence, a complete, story of like whole universe, God, whoever you believe in, please push me to the destiny that is going to give me wealth, or not even just wealth, but prosperity, abundance. And then in a sense, the Olamide part is like that acknowledgement of like claiming that, like manifesting, like one of the people say in manifestation, you have to like claim it like it's already yours. So that's in a sense what happened with my middle name is like the first part of my name was the prayer or like the desire for it. And then the middle part was like, okay, we're claiming it. We're sticking it in stone. My wealth has arrived. It's already here. The moment we named her, it's already here. So I love my name. For a long time, I have to admit, I didn't like my name because growing up as a Nigerian immigrant in the United States, it was really hard fitting in, especially since I grew up in the suburbs.
Yeah.
I grew up in the suburbs of Minnesota.
Yeah.
Woodbury, Cottage Grove. It was like, So first of all, like even to find people who look like me was hard. And even if I did find people who look like me, they weren't like me because they didn't grow up the way I grew up.
They were African American?
They were Black Americans. Yeah, they grew up in their own whole culture. Black American culture is its own subculture, right? So obviously African immigrants can kind of like assimilate to Black American culture, but ultimately we do have our own culture that we fall back onto. So I found it difficult, like assimilating, because I'm like, well, I mean, I'm Black, but like I didn't grow up like you guys did. And then the white people, like, you know, they would look at me like, you're Black, but you're not really Black. So like, what are you? Like, I was like a conundrum. And it really like affected my identity. I had an identity crisis for the longest time. I'm like, who am I? I don't even know.
Yeah.
Because like, I'm not like Black, but I'm also not white. But I'm African. And even like the Africans, they, you know, because I was still quirky too. Because I was into random things like, you know, I was really quiet. Let me say this. I know it doesn't seem like it now, but as a child, I was really shy. I didn't want to speak up. I would rather just be in my corner, read my little book, draw my little drawings.
Yeah.
I was a very timid and shy child. And then as time grew up, as time progressed, I came out of my shell a little bit more, but then people were like, oh, that's weird. Why do you like that? I'm like, oh, I guess people don't like that. Let me push that to the side. So it was really, really hard. And I didn't really like my name because it was so obvious that I wasn't from this country. Like, oh my God, like what name is that? So like, that's when I started going by just Sumi. And I actually spelt my name differently before. It was Summy. And it was,
that feels very American.
Yeah, it was very, very American. And I wrote it that way because it was very close to Sammy. And people, it's actually funny because anytime I order food from like different places, I still like put Sammy or like Sam, because that's kind of just my alias, like, oh, that's Sam. But anyway, so Sumi was the name that I would go by throughout my childhood. And then eventually I was like, you know what, why am I like ashamed of my name? Like my name is powerful. Like it literally brought my family here. I mean, so let me own it. So I started owning it. I started going by Sunmisola. I started naming all of the stuff, my art that I created, art by Sunmisola. And then eventually I'm like, okay, I can't expect people to call me Sunmisola every time they see me. So I shortened it to Sumi, but now it's Sunmi, which more represents my actual name. Yeah. It's just a shortened version of it. So because I call you Sumi. Yeah. So like, which is fine. Yeah. You're open to like both, or do you have a preference of like? I'm open to both. So not a lot of people call me Sunmisola. Even my parents don't call me that unless like I'm in trouble or they like are upset with me and they're like, or my siblings will call me that if we're like joking around or like, but I'm open to both. It's just like some people struggle with saying it the way it's pronounced because it's Sunmisola, and there's like an accent that goes with it as well. But I'm not opposed to anyone calling me that. If someone wants to call, Athena actually calls me that sometimes. Does she? I can see that. Yeah. Athena calls me that sometimes. Yeah. So like it's like, oh, okay, that's cool. No one just says that, but I love it. Yeah. So I'm not opposed to either or. Yeah, I mean that's a very powerful story and definitely really relatable to like struggling with being in suburban Minnesota and being so different and having a different name. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm thinking about, so when I was in college, we took this class and it was African American and African Studies or something like that. It was just like a discussion class on like the difference and like the challenges of navigating communities between Black Americans and African immigrants and like the struggles that we went through growing up, and we're often like pitted against each other in some ways because like Black Americans would like make fun of African people and things like that because of them being different. And then sometimes African immigrants would be like, oh, I don't want to be associated with those Black Americans because there's already this like negative perception, and they wanted to have this distinct difference between those spaces. And one interesting thing that came up is that
Black Americans will always be viewed as American, whereas African immigrants will always be viewed as foreigners, and like the different privileges that go between like those different identities and like relations and stuff. So kind of made me think of that when you were talking about that growing up.
Yeah. No, it's interesting you say that, because there is a weird rift between the two communities, and it really shouldn't be, because there's so much that we can learn from each other. I 100% understand Black Americans' frustration with Africans, because they come in and they we, in a sense, we do come in and we kind of just like take over, like we did, like all the affirmative action stuff, like a lot of it goes to African immigrants. Like it's mainly African immigrants who are going to these colleges, are, reaping the benefits of some of these social programs rather than Black Americans. However, African Americans or African immigrants, we're honestly just kind of seizing the opportunity that gives us. And a lot of Africans aren't actually truly aware of the trauma that Black Americans have endured throughout the progression of this country. And some African immigrants are starting to like realize, oh wow, that is actually messed up that your ancestors went through that, but not enough. And I think Black Americans should also understand that like African immigrants literally come from poverty. So although some Black Americans are in poverty, it's not the same type of poverty. Right. It's like, at least here, there's like welfare systems that you can fall back on. There is no welfare system in Africa. Like if you're impoverished, you're impoverished. You can go days without eating. So African Americans, in a sense, kind of like African immigrants, I can speak from experience. My parents often would talk down upon Black Americans and say, why are they like this? Why are they so lazy? Why are they putting a bad name for Black people in general? When it's like, well, it's really not them. It's just the way that they're portrayed in media. That's a whole nother story, because I've realized in my time, I'm like, wait, Black Americans, they're not a monolith. Like the whole like subsection of Black people who are dominating the media spaces of like being like hip hop, the ghetto, and like all this stuff. There's actually a very, very small percentage of Black people who ascribe to that. And most Black Americans actually are not that way. And that's one misconception that needs to be cleared up. And another misconception is that, African immigrants often, they refuse to admit it, but I can say, especially for me, a lot of Black immigrants look up to Black Americans, because they, in a sense, they see like, wow, you guys are in this free country, like you have all these opportunities, and they look up to them because Black Americans, in a sense, have steamrolled culture around the whole world, right? So they like BET and all the music videos and like all of the different Black leaders that have emerged from this country has been inspirational for a lot of Black immigrants and other Black people in other parts of the world. However, when Black immigrants come to this country and they try to befriend some of these people, often they're ridiculed, their accents are made fun of, they're like, oh, you smell, you stink, what's wrong with you? And it can be very, it can be hurtful. Yeah. So there's like a weird like schism that has been brought, and it really needs to stop, honestly, because we both come from different types of suffering, but we can each learn from our suffering.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think a lot of times now, like Black Americans are searching for like ancestry and culture and tradition, and that's something that they might admire about immigrants coming here, is like you still have that tie to like where you came from, your cultural ties, your native tongue. Exactly. And so being able to like blend those and connect, I feel like we can really like thrive. And
Nigerians, we love to share our culture, okay? So
loved the food at the baby shower.
I know the food of my mom made most of it. Yeah, we love to share our culture. We love anyone to come. That's one difference I've noticed about Black American and African immigrant culture, is that Black Americans can be a little bit more gatekeepy about their culture, which rightfully so, because there are been cultural appropriation and times where other non-Black people would capitalize on the culture and make money off of it. 100%, I understand that. However, African immigrants aren't like that. We don't typically gatekeep our culture. In fact, we want everyone, we're loud about it. Like, we want everyone to see who we are.
Yeah.
That's why, at least in Yoruba culture, all of our get-ups are just flamboyant. The big hats, the big like dresses, the long, the geles, the everything. It's like, we want to be flashy. We want to be noticed.
And you see people, like a lot of like foreigners will go to Africa and they'll get their braids done. They'll be like, I hope it's okay that I'm a white girl. But they were like, I don't care. Like,
they don't care.
Getting it all done.
A lot of foreigners who come to Nigeria, they love it when you assimilate to their culture. Like, oh, you want to be one of us?
Yeah.
Okay, come on, let's show you. Let me show you what you can do. This is what we eat. This is how we dance. Oh, okay, a little bit too much. But yeah, people are willing to teach you, and they love to do that.
Yeah.
And, I can't really say the same for Black Americans, or at least not all of them, but some of them. But I can understand why they can be hesitant because, again, like a lot of the times there have been moments where, they're appropriated and then people are capitalizing on their culture, which is like, I get that. I understand that. I think gatekeeping is necessary in certain instances, but then other instances, you just have to be aware of, like, you just have to discern the intention behind who wants to come into your circle, ultimately.
Yeah, like the appropriation versus appreciation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. Honestly, I'm kind of leaning more towards letting her tell us when she wants to lock it.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm really all about allowing my kids the full reign of what happens to their body.
Yeah.
Because too many times we parents kind of make the decisions for their kids to alter some parts of themselves, and I don't really want to do that. Because at first I thought about piercing her ears because I'm like, oh, she'd be so cute with like little earrings.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, but what if she grows up and like hated that I did that to her?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna wait. As much as I think she would look so cute in little diamond studs, I'm gonna let her tell me when she's older if she wants to pierce her ears. So
I like that.
Yeah.
So tell me how her name came to be.
Oh yeah. So oh my gosh, Zinnia. Okay. So first of all, when I got pregnant, I thought I was pregnant with twins, mind you.
Yeah.
But it's okay. I still think it's gonna happen down the line. But when I got pregnant, we didn't know the gender. We actually thought we were having a boy for the longest time. So we didn't actually think about girl names for a while. And then August 2023, that was the month I became pregnant, we were harvesting flowers in our community garden, and there were a bunch of zinnias everywhere. And I'm like, oh my God, I love this flower. It's such a pretty flower. It's easy to grow. It's an easy-going flower. There's not a lot you got to do to it. It's just so beautiful. Every time you look at it, it just seems as though it's smiling back at you. It's just a nice flower, and I've really come to really like that flower, but it was just how I felt about it. I didn't really think much of it. And then I got pregnant, and the pregnancy happened, and then I think around, I want to say March, as I got bigger, I'm thinking, well, what if it is a girl? So I started talking to Bronson. I'm like, hey, what do you think about the name, I struggle because sometimes I like to say Xenia, but then Zinnia. But anyway, what do you think about the name Xenia for if it is a girl? And he's like, yeah, I really like that because, they're great flowers. They're pretty. They come in all different colors and they're easy to grow. Yeah, I think that's great. And I'm like, okay, cool. And that was that.
That was it?
That was it. We didn't really think about it because we really thought we were having a boy. We had everything picked out. And then when she was born and she came out and we were like, what's the gender? We're like, oh. And I looked, I'm like, oh, it's a girl. Oh my
gosh.
And then Bronson was like, Zinnia.
Cute.
So yeah, and it fits her so well because one, she's a Taurus. And being a Taurus named after a flower is the most Taurus thing that could happen. Yeah, because Taurus is, spring. It's ruled by Venus, and Venus is all about beauty and nature and, flowers and all of that. So it just really went well with her. And also, zinnias, their nature, the flower, like I said, They're easy to grow. You don't really have to do much. You just have to give them what they need, and the rest is good. You just gotta let them prosper. And I really do believe in my heart that that's who she is deep down. She's the type of kid, she's the type of baby, or she's gonna grow up to be the type of kid that is always, she's gonna know what she's gonna want. I feel as though she's not gonna be like me that kind of went back and forth, don't really know, went through this identity crisis. No, I don't believe she's gonna do that. I believe that she's gonna know exactly who she is from the get-go, and she's gonna know exactly what she wants to do, and she's gonna do it. And my role and her dad's role is to just provide her what she needs, and she will take off. And that's exactly what the flower does, is you fertilize it, you give it sunlight, you give it water, and then you step back and you let it grow, and it grows beautifully. We don't do any type of pruning. We don't usually, the zinnias that we grew in our community garden at Sioux Line, we didn't do anything to it. We barely deadheaded them. We barely trimmed the back. We just watered it and let them be. And they were the most bushiest, tallest flowers I've ever seen. They were amazing. And I'm like, dang, we got to do nothing to these flowers.
Yeah.
So I truly believe that that was a perfect name for her. And it's funny because I felt that connection to that flower before I even realized that I kind of knew I was pregnant, but I hadn't taken the actual pregnancy test to confirm. So that August, when we were cutting flowers to like put it in a bouquet, I'm like, oh my God, I love these flowers. And the whole time I had a little flower like budding in my womb. So yeah, that's how the name came to be. I just love the flower, and I felt as though that would be a perfect name for a girl. And it turns out that our girl, aligned with the qualities of that flower perfectly.
Yeah, I love that. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so you and Bronson, I feel like, are really healthy representation of like stable relationships and stuff. Like, I really appreciate your guys' love and your union. What do you think that comes from?
I honestly think that comes from him and I individually. Well, first of all, I think him and I just have our values aligned, first and foremost. And also, him and I are very open to growth, just individually. Like, before I met him, I was always constantly seeking, like, what can I do to be better? How can I be better? How can I grow? How can I, what can I learn? And he was the same way. And I truly believe that, a relationship works well if both parties are constantly seeking towards improvement and growth, and not willing to stay stagnant. Because if one party is willing to stay stagnant but the other party wants to grow and do things, it's not going to work out. If both parties are stagnant, well, I guess it could work out, but then it's like, if no growth happens, then death happens, right? The opposite of growth is death. So if both parties are stagnant, then the relationship can ultimately die, and then you just kind of like separate. You guys are like, I don't even know what we're even doing together anymore. We're both kind of just doing our own thing. So I think the main thing that helps us is that we both want to see each other, or we both for ourselves want to be better for ourselves. And because of that, we want to be better for each other. And that ultimately is really the foundation of our relationship. Because our relationship, we met at a concert, but we both...
Absol, right?
No, Earth Gay.
Oh, Earth Gay.
But, so we both went to the concert solo. And the reason why we both went to the concert solo is because we both were at a stage in our life where, like, we don't want to live for other people and let other people hold us back for our ability to thrive and move forward. Because too many times that I missed concerts or I missed events because I was waiting on another person. And him too, like, he missed opportunities because he was waiting on another person. And it's just like, why do we have to do that? Why are we allowing ourselves to be held back because other people aren't on the same path of wanting to like move forward? And so I think our values of always constantly striving for improvement, and not like toxic improvement to the point where like, oh, I want to be better than you, or competition or anything like that. It's more like, no, life is truly about ever everlasting growth.
Yeah.
You're constantly there's more things to always learn. There's more perspectives that you can have, more changes you can go through. Because if you're not growing, then you're dying, in my opinion. Same with like plants. Like if you're constantly feeding it, it's just going to keep growing. If it stops growing, then it's just going to wither away. So I think that was our main value with each other, is that we are always going to be striving to grow. And if we're both growing together, who knows what type of stuff we can create together. That, and also him and I are, we prioritize solitude. Truly. Like, we do things together a lot, but we prioritize him having his alone time and me having my alone time. In fact, like, we even talked about, like, when we finally like build our own house together, that we're like, you should build your wing and I'll have my wing. No, seriously, I truly believe that like couples can thrive better if you're allowed to still like be who you are and like be in your own silence, be in your own independence, because then you're not losing yourself. Because that's one thing that I've struggled in my past relationships, was constantly meshing with the other person, their likes, their dislikes, their whole environment. And I became so depleted because I wasn't feeding who I was, and it led to resentment. And one thing that we both agreed on was that if we say, oh, I need some alone time, we're like, say less. Got it. I'm going to go out. I'm going to go take a walk. I'm going to be in this room. You know, do you want me to check on you in the next hour or so? Like, no, I'm good. I'll come out to you when I'm ready. And that's it. We don't give each other flack if we say that we need to separate, because we don't take it personally. Now, if we're in disagreements, and don't get me wrong, we definitely fight and we definitely have disagreements. Typically, it's because of a miscommunication, or one of us just didn't have the chance to like have our solitude time. So that's where it really ultimately comes from, is our values are aligned, but we also allow each other to the space from each other. Because ultimately, we were born onto this earth by ourselves, unless you're a twin or whatever. But then we ultimately die by ourselves too. Our souls are one. And as much as we can cohabitate with other people and connect with other people, we're social creatures. We are still who we are internally, and we need to prioritize making space to cultivate our own interest, our own personality, what makes us, what fuels our own cup. And then that would just allow us to be more, what's the word?
More fulfilled.
More fulfilled, in the relationship.
Yeah, that makes sense. Did your parents like always like welcome him? Because I heard with like especially Nigerian families, like it can be, you know.
My dad loved him from the get-go. My dad loves him. My mom has her own traumas. She and my dad didn't have the best relationship. In fact, it was very volatile. It was very toxic. It was not. They should have been separated from the get-go, but I don't know. They just stayed together for 20 plus years and put us all through this misery for no reason. But, well, I guess it is a reason. It taught me a lot about their relationship. But regardless, my mom has a lot of stuff within herself that either she doesn't want to deal with, or she just is unwilling to deal with. I don't know, but I just give her grace and give her space to figure it out. But I ultimately think that she sees a lot of my dad in Brownson, which is true, because my dad and Brownson are very similar to a certain extent. They're not exactly alike, but there are definitely qualities that my dad has that Brownson also shares. And I think that was kind of triggering for her. And she really did not like him right away. Even now, like, she's still kind of, because she's very traditional, and the way that my relationship with Brownson is we're not traditional. Like, we're not like the way we operate is not similar to what other couples do. Like, we're not technically legally married, but we call each other husband and wife, right? Was that hard for her? That was hard for her. Yeah. That was very hard for her, because she was like, she kept saying like, oh, like that's what your dad did. Your dad would like tell me like we're not married, and I felt as though he didn't value me. For her, like, for her, value and love comes out of like what someone like proclaims, like how they proclaim their love to you. And for her, it's like these outlandish grand gestures, huge wedding, all this stuff. But for me, like the way I feel love is like you actually spending quality time with me, you actually knowing who I am and anticipating what I like and what I don't like. And also, one of my love languages is acts of service. So he naturally is a service-oriented person. So he can foresee when I need help with something, and he does it, and I don't have to worry about it. And that's where I feel loved. And I'm like, okay, like, yes, we don't have a paper, but ultimately, he's doing all the things that I need to feel loved and secured, and that's what matters the most to me. But my mom just doesn't quite understand that. She just sees, well, if he doesn't actually marry you, then how can you say he loves you? I'm like, well, he's committed to me. He doesn't cheat on me. He doesn't go out and do things. He doesn't, I never felt as though he had a wandering eye. I never felt as though he was looking for other people. He wanted to take advantage of me. No, he generally wanted to be in my presence. I wanted to be in his presence, and we just meshed that way. So I think really it's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
But
and
even
generational.
And
too.
Generational, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. That's cute. Yeah. So I also want to talk about like your practice with astrology and kind of like where you see your future goals going and things like that.
Yes. Okay. So I do have an astrology practice. I haven't really been advertising it as much as I would like to because I'm still stuck on, I don't know enough yet. I need to learn. But I realized that like more knowledge is gained through practice and experience and applying what I learned. So now it's just actually applying that. So my goals now is to be consistent. I have trouble with consistency.
Yeah.
Okay. So I really struggle with planning, preparation, and follow through. Because I'm the type of person that's like, I get an idea and I bounce on it like, okay, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
But then once that drive fizzles out, it's really hard for me to like see it to completion.
Yeah.
That or I skipped the planning and preparation stages, get right to the execution stage, and it doesn't turn out the way I thought it would. And I just abandon it because it's like, why did it? Well, you didn't plan, you didn't prepare for it. So now I'm cultivating the skills to, plan. What do I want to do? So now I want to start putting out weekly blogs, astrology blogs, and not even just astrology, but anything that has to do with spirituality and esoteric sciences, anything along those lines. I'm really deep into the Kabbalah right now, so I'm just like, I got to like write about this because that's how I learn the best. That's how I apply my knowledge the best, is either talking about it or writing it out in like a narrative, or actually like practicing it with like a client or something.
Okay, what about like TikTok or YouTube? Because I know you've talked about wanting to do a YouTube before.
I know.
It would be so good. Like there's so many things that like with the homeschooling and like the being a mom and the astrology, I would totally watch your vlog.
I'm not opposed to that. Trust me, I'm not opposed to that. That is down the pipeline.
Okay.
I think where I hesitate is I'm still working through my anxiety behind being seen and putting my appearance out there and just like nitpicking every little thing, like, oh, I don't like the way my shirt is, or why did I say it that way? Because the way I operate is like sometimes I do need to take long pauses to really think about what I want to say next. And it's like, do people want to watch that? Do people want to watch me sit there for like 30 seconds, like contemplating and then talking? Because sometimes
you cut that shit out. You can edit.
That's true. I guess I can. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, I can edit it. But it's just, I'm working through my own issues surrounding that. But I'm not opposed. I actually want to do that because I know that's how I'm going to be able to build my astrology practice.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get clients like out the woodworks. Like people have to see me to want to work with me. So Yes, a YouTube is coming. I actually already have a YouTube channel. And I actually have one video that I posted like 2 years ago. And it was just me talking about like, oh, my search for identity. What am I thinking about? But honestly, I think what it is I have to put less pressure on myself. And it doesn't have to be this grand cinematic masterpiece. Eventually it can get to that, but like really just propping up my camera, sitting in front of it and just like saying, hey, these are my thoughts about these topics, and like maybe doing some vlogs here and there, recording like, oh, this is what we're learning. I'm a little bit hesitant though to include the kids into it though.
Yeah.
Mainly because like I'm scared of how the internet is nowadays. Like critique that, and also like, you know, my kids, I just worry about their privacy in a sense, because too many times I watch videos with kids, and don't get me wrong, I think videos with kids is fine, but then I don't want to have to fall down a track where like, oh, these videos with my kids make the most money. And I'm like, well, now I got to make more videos with my kids.
They become like employees.
And I don't want to have to do that. So I think if I would just in the beginning, just do a hard boundary of like, my kids will not be in my videos unless they're like in the background or they're like, it's going to be primarily me, then I will be more comfortable with that. But I'm not to say that I'm not going to talk about homeschooling and my experience with homeschooling. I think really it's going to be more about like, what curriculum are we doing? Why we chose homeschooling? Some of the tips and tricks that helps with me in my homeschool journey, and not necessarily including Josiah.
Yeah, like they don't need to have their face all in the stuff, but
So that's down the works. But so future goals is writing the blog, and I think the blog is also going to be a nice foundation for my videos too. And then eventually creating that content will start attracting more clients who will want to get readings from me and will want to get more consultations, because I don't want to silo myself to just be an astrologer, because astrology is just one science of the whole esoteric sciences. Oh my God, there's alchemy, there's numerology, there's tarot, there's other Kabbalistic practices that I'm just like, oh my God, I got to learn it all. And I think eventually once I'm going to just express what I learned as I go. I think honestly that would be the best thing. It's like, this is what I learned and this is my insight on it. What do you guys think? And then go from there, because there's a really nice community of people who are really into the stuff that I'm into, and I definitely want to like connect with that. And then eventually just making TikToks and actually I had to go on a social media cleanse. Okay. So when TikTok shut down for like 2 seconds. So when TikTok shut down for like, a half a day, I utilized, as soon as I saw that message, I was like, all right, delete. I deleted TikTok, I deleted Facebook, I deleted Instagram, I deleted X, Twitter or whatever. And I'm just like, okay, I got to go on a social media cleanse, because I got to like actually hone in on what I want to do, like the content that I want to do. Eventually, when I go back on social media, then I'm no longer a consumer and I'm going to be a, contributor. Yeah. So that's where I'm at.
I think the TikTok would be like a perfect avenue, because people always just like pop on there and just like say their thoughts. Like it's not a lot of pressure, not a lot of like editing. I could totally see you doing that.
Yeah, I think that works for me, because editing is, I don't know if I want to be editing, but but I also don't want to like just talk out of my ass and just be like, but who knows? Some people like when people
like the raw and like the authentic thoughts, stream of consciousness stuff. Yeah.
I'm just working through that. That thought of being on camera and the ability to be perceived and judged. That's always been like a core soft spot for me. Yeah. Growing up in a very hypercritical family where every little thing that you do is noticed and criticized. So it's like, I think that's why I struggle with putting myself out there, because I have yet to do the work to kind of unravel that and like, all right, that's fine. Like that's a thing that you have, but even if that does happen, that can't be the reason why you just don't move forward. And still working through that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's a sore spot for a lot of people. Yeah, definitely. So how can people support you?
How can they support me? How can you guys support me?
Well, tapping into your group.
Oh,
right?
okay. Yeah. So if anyone is into astrology or just want to learn more about astrology, you can join we host monthly speakers, and we're also going to start hosting monthly meetups where it's just a casual, either online or in person, just talking about astrology. So National Council for Geocosmic Research, or NCGR, is the name of the group. And then our local chapter is the Minnesota North Star chapter. I'm the president of that chapter. It's a really small chapter, so don't expect much, but I already know we're going to grow. So, or if you would like to do a reading with me, then I do have a website, which is funny. I have all this stuff in place. I just don't market it. So I have a website. It's consciouscreatrix.com. Conscious Creatrix, CRETRIX. I changed it from ESS to X because it just sounds better. .com. And that's where I'll be posting my blogs once I start posting weekly blogs about tarot, numerology, astrology, any other esoteric, downloads. Because sometimes I just be getting random downloads. And I'm like writing it down in my notes app really quick. And then sometimes I forget about it. But I have a lot of lists of stuff of consciousness that's just been like splurted out that I need to organize. So that website, you can follow me on Instagram, same A Conscious Creatrix. I'm not posting that much right now, but eventually when I do come back on the platform, I'll be posting a lot. Same with TikTok, it's under the same handle. So yeah, and you can also buy my art. I haven't really made as much art as I would like to recently, but eventually, I'm actually pivoting to a more stylized art, because at first I was so gung-ho about making it like academically right, like you know how like if you go to a art school and they teach you how to like the anatomy and the shadows and stuff, I was so hyper focused on making sure my art looked like that that it really like took out the fun for me. And I had this epiphany. I'm like, why don't I just like create whatever, like paint whatever just happens, like even if it's not right, or the head is too big, or the eyes are uneven, or the arms are wonky, like who cares, like just create something. And that's where I'm at now. So I'm definitely going to start creating more art pieces that are aligned with some of the interests that I have with spirituality and like, the different realms and how that can influence us. So my website will definitely have any art stuff too, and pieces, because I like to create jewelry sometimes, but I have some old jewelry pieces that I probably should put up for sale. So yeah, my website for sure is where you can support me.
Awesome. I'll have all that stuff linked in the video and in the description as well.
Yay.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This was great. Yeah. And I would love to be back again. Like we could do a more like in-depth topic too. But I love this.
I'd be down. It'd be cool to do like a reading on film.
I could do that.
Something like that.
Or even like a tarot reading, astrology reading. Hell yeah. Oh, I know you said that you wanted to do a synastry thing. My astrology class is taking in people who want to have their synastry charts read for free.
Oh, is that like the couple type thing? Ooh. Okay, I'll definitely look into that.
Yeah, let me actually send you the link now that I'm thinking about it, because I just got an email from my instructor and he was like, if you know anyone that wants to have a synastry chart.